Wow. I knew that was going to happen on the first one. Hey everybody, welcome to our very first episode of The Tea with Mon Amie. For this first one, we will be interviewing our CEO and president, Laurel Mungo. I hope you guys enjoy. Welcome, Laurel. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
So tell me a little bit about your day as CEO of Mon Amie.
My day starts off the same every single day. I wake up at 5 so that I have an hour to look at the news, have my 1 cup of coffee for the day with collagen, and then at 6 a.m. I work out for 1 hour every day.
Wow.
Because I'm a creature of habit, and that really helps me. Every day is different at Mon Amie. So oftentimes I have planned activities or phone calls or meetings in the morning. I always leave the afternoon for being on the floor with the brides and the staff.
Okay. Cool. So would you say that having that routine is important if you're going to be a leader? Do you think that that plays into
I think
your
so.
ability?
I think because working out evens me out. Mm-hmm. And I think that a good leader has got to be able to assess any situation on the spur of the moment and be able to handle it. And if you've got extra aggression or anything pulsing through your body, mm-hmm. it's hard to stay level-headed.
Okay. Yeah. So Mon Amie is fairly established. It's been around for a long time.
1976.
That's crazy. And in the same location, right?
No. Always in Costa Mesa. Mm-hmm. She started the business in 1976 next to a ice cream parlor in about 400 square feet. When I came to work for the company 2 short years later, we were in 1,200 square feet. When I first started, I was the 4th person to receive a paycheck from Mon Amie.
That's amazing. So when did you take it over?
Well, that's a really long story that I will bullet point. Started working in 1978 until 1994. In 1989, we moved to our current location that was built from the ground up to the specs that Verna Houston, the owner and founder of Mon Amie, had put down at that point. So mm-hmm. We are in the original footprint from 1989.
Wow. And has the store stayed relatively the same, or in terms of like its size and?
The size, this is our original footprint plus 1,200 square feet. At one time during the late 90s into probably about 2008 or 9, we were the entire side of this shopping center, which now houses 2 restaurants, a day spa, and a ballroom dancing establishment.
Kind of the perfect place for a bridal store.
Yes. When we first moved here, Friar Tuck's was with us, and they were with us for about 27 years. They kind of redid their business plan, and now they're just at South Coast Plaza. We had a cake place, we had a photographer, and the hair salon has been here for 29 years.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's
it was.
So cool.
It was a one-stop place.
Yes. Wow. Okay. So what would you say has been the biggest change since you were the 4th employee originally when Mon Amie started?
I would say, well, obviously the consumer has changed dramatically. The industry has definitely changed. There's no longer print magazines that brides would come in with stacks and stacks and stacks of magazines that they'd ripped out of the pages and wanting to try those gowns on. You know, the consumer of today is much more educated than they were in the 70s, 80s, and even early 90s. Mm-hmm. But the basic reason that everybody walks through that door, they're getting married.
Yes.
And that hasn't changed.
Yeah.
And I don't think that time can change that. Time can't take away that magic of a woman picking out her wedding gown.
Yes. So when you had started here, were you already married, or did you get married?
Well, so a little back history. When I first started, I was not married, and I got married to the first blip in the screen in the history of my life. Very young. It was 1979, and that lasted about 6 years. So then I really became we were growing. There was so much to learn. I really delved into being the career at Mon Amie, and I was introduced to my husband of almost 30 years while I was here. The person that introduced us worked here, and I was set up on my first ever blind date.
Wow. So this place has a lot of impact maybe on your own personal story, would you say?
Yes.
Like there's
I learned what I have learned about business. Her name is Verna Hewson. Verna taught me. I mean, from quarterly taxes to budgeting when the cash flow is low to how to treat people, how to be a leader within the walls of Mon Amie. Has it impacted who I am? Yes. It helped mold who I am. It helped me believe in the power of women, to celebrate women, which is something we've always done. So absolutely.
And so when you were here and you were getting married, when you picked your dress, how was that experience?
Oh my gosh.
Working in Bridal already.
And we're talking about the second one. The first one doesn't count.
It's okay.
It was actually very stressful for me because we were in New York. I got married in September, and we were at April Market. And I had been told by a designer that was very popular at the time that he was going to give me my wedding gown and I was going to be able to design it.
Wow.
I'm not a designer. I have a good eye. I can look at design, but I cannot come up with it. So that was a little stressful for me. So in going to the different design houses, because we would see fashion shows every single day back then, that was in 1990, a wedding gown came out onto the runway, and I said, there it is. That's the dress. I hadn't tried it on. I knew that was a dress I wanted to walk down the aisle in. The only caveat for me at the time was I wanted to wear pink.
Of course.
I wanted to wear pink. And so I tried it on, and I said, can you do it in pink? And yes, they could. Yes, they would make that exception because the designer had very strict guidelines. It was a Skazi, and at the time he had just come off of designing all of Nancy Reagan's clothes. So he was kind of a big deal at the time, and he didn't do colors at all. But he agreed to do that for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's so... That's so fun.
But then I had to go back to the designer that had so kindly said you can do whatever you want, and that will be my wedding gift to you, and tell him that I had found a wedding gown.
Oh.
That wasn't from him.
So could you just show him the wedding gown and be like, can you make this in pink?
They didn't, no, because they didn't do that. Designers didn't copy each other. Each designer, because there were so few of them that they each had a signature look. There were maybe, if there's 300 wedding gown designers today, there was maybe 65 name brands.
Wow. And they all had their own style. It is very different, though, because you will walk in to a store and you'll see a lot of designers kind of doing some version of the same thing because it's popular, so that's, to hear that a designer isn't going to copy a designer, like that almost sounds foreign in today's time.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's really kind of the sad part of the evolution of the bridal industry is that there are definite standouts that you can look at a gown and go, that's this one or that's that one. But a lot of times you have no idea.
Yes.
And it's not as important to the brides these days, which is a good thing, actually, that they're looking in the mirror at what looks good at them, for them on their body, and not necessarily who designed it.
Yes.
Which is very healthy.
Yes. Yeah. And I think too, what's so great about that as well is a lot of the designers that are copying, for lack of a better word, other designers, a lot of times they're doing it in a more affordable price range for people that want that look, but maybe can't justify spending the kind of money that these other designers are asking.
Yeah, and that's kind of a double-edged sword, that you want every bride to feel as beautiful as she can on her wedding day, and yet if she has a very tight budget, we're very respectful of that. And so it's a good thing that she can find something in that silhouette that isn't the one who maybe initiated it, but she's going to walk down the aisle and feel amazing.
Yes. Yeah. But I mean, like you said, it is really great that brides today they don't have tunnel vision on one particular idea, one particular designer. It's just about what makes them feel good, what makes them feel like a bride, which is the whole point in the end.
Well, and I think from a different perspective, and it's really kind of along those same lines, the difference that I've seen from now to now, from 30, 40 years ago, is how women can look in the mirror and feel beautiful no matter what society has told them, because society's in such a better place now.
Mm-hmm.
The inclusiveness is so exciting to me.
Yes.
And all women are beautiful. And that has been a message that I've always felt in my heart, but it's true. It's so true. And that's the difference between now and when I started in 1978.
Mm-hmm. There is a lot more empowerment within women, and women kind of feeling liberated in themselves and
absolutely.
in their own beauty, which I'm glad you brought that up, because I did want to ask you what it means to you to be a female business owner in today's times, especially.
Well, it's exciting. It's frustrating. I never stop learning. I think the big difference is that women today can walk in anywhere at any type of business and be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And what comes out of their mouth is listened to. Mm-hmm. And that's a huge difference. Mm-hmm. Huge difference. And I think because we as women have come so far to have that confidence, because that took during, I'm old enough that I went through the women's movement, and we were not allowed to have strong opinions.
Yeah.
And if we did have strong opinions, we were labeled.
Mm-hmm.
And that is gone. That is shattered. We have a long way to go as far as equal work and equal pay. Mm-hmm. But the strides that we've made within a lifetime are huge. Mm-hmm. And it only continues to grow. Mm-hmm. So I love being a woman business owner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's really amazing. And I think one thing I do always notice about you is how open, like you said, how open you are to improving and to learning from anybody. It's never been like it's never been like you would ever look down on anybody or think that somebody was not qualified enough to tell you, ways that you could improve. You're willing to adapt to changing times. And I think especially, for generations older than the present one, it's very hard for these changes that are so different. All the new technology and the social media is so hard to get the hang of when you didn't just grow up with it. Right. And things were so different. So I think that's one thing that is it's really great about how you lead, and how you show other people how to lead is always, never think you're too good for anybody's.
Well, thank you.
Yes.
And I will say that comes from a very simple mantra of mine. Mm-hmm. I would never ask anybody to do something that I wouldn't do myself or that I haven't done myself. Mm-hmm. And I also have the utmost respect for probably, I guess, millennials, before millennials, after millennials, because of your fearlessness. My generation grew up with, we were kind of boxed in, and we were a little bit afraid of change. You guys aren't, and it's so exciting, and I have a lot of respect for that.
Yeah, and that's really exciting to see, business owners that are excited about that and willing to embrace that. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Oh, of course. So kind of on that same note, who would you say has been your biggest influence in your career?
Well, that's easy. It was Verna. She kind of took me under her wing at a very early age and always respected me as a person, even though I had a huge learning curve. I wanted to be a movie star when I was going to college.
Really?
Well, not necessarily a movie star, but I wanted to be a commentator. I wanted to, just be on TV. I was told that I couldn't, that I would never be able to achieve that. I wasn't encouraged as a person, as a woman, for a very long time. And that first little blip in the screen with the first marriage was really tough for me. And I was with Verna, who really taught me with an open heart and an open mind every inch of the business. So she also allowed me to grow. I had never had that in my life. I hadn't had that type of influence. Now, my family's fabulous. I had a wonderful childhood, the oldest of 4 kids, but I was never encouraged. It was like, take care of yourself, get your stuff done, but never any extra encouragement. And she gave that to me and believed in me. And that was huge.
That's awesome. Yeah. Wow. So in terms of business-wise, she taught you everything you needed to know to run the business. So when you eventually came back and were able to take it over, you just jumped in and you just knew what you were doing immediately, or were there hiccups? Or?
Oh, gosh. More like belches. Yes, there were hiccups because I had been a stay-at-home mom for 18 years, and I chose to be a stay-at-home mom because I worked so hard to become a mother, because I it's not common knowledge, but it's nothing that I hide, that I was not able to have children. And so my children are adopted, which has taught me a lot. I'm their advocate because all of them have special needs, which we had no idea at the time. And was a real journey that taught me, don't take no for an answer. Keep going, because I had to be their advocate because they couldn't be. So were there hiccups when I first came back? Yes, absolutely. It was a big learning curve.
Yes.
And it still is. As far as like the technology. And I was very old fashioned when I first came. It's like, I am not giving up on print magazine. I am not. And I believe I had a conversation with you about that, because I guess I should be embarrassed to say this, but I'm not. I still get a paper in the morning because I like the idea of sitting down and reading something.
It is therapeutic in a way. And
yes.
I do the same thing with my books.
Right. And now I don't want to, I will not cancel my LA Times subscription because I know that I'm helping somebody stay in their job. And that's really important to me.
Yes. And you can't change everything about how you do what you do. When it comes to your business, you change and you adapt. Within reason, but when it comes to your personal life, just because newspapers are out doesn't mean they have to be out for
well, thank you. Thank you.
So when you got here, who kind of helped you get acclimated to life as CEO? Who taught you, what you need to do as far as buying or
that was nobody did. That was something that I kind of I went to a few people that are still here, that that I really couldn't be without. And thankfully they showed me that part of the business. I had to, what I do as far as buying is I'm out on the floor. You know, I see what the brides are trying on. I learn what they're looking for. And that's how I went forward in buying. Was there a couple of mistakes along the way? You betcha. But I think I have a handle on that. And I was always just naturally good at that for some reason. I wasn't trained. It's just something that I love. I love wedding gowns. But I've learned, you know, to cut back just because I love it. I don't need it. And I also, once a week, as I have told you before, I touch every gown I own. I go through the store, I look at them, I zip them up if they need to be zipped up, but I look at every dress.
Yes. One thing that I feel like has been so funny to me since I've been here is your soft spot, because you were saying about how your wedding dress is pink, like a little earlier, and your soft spot for pink wedding dresses was always the funniest thing to me. I remember coming through the store and being like, what in the world? You're like, isn't it amazing? Isn't it great? It's like pink roughly. And I'm like, oh
yes, I
no. You know which dress I'm talking
yes,
about.
Yes, I do.
Too.
We won't name names, but yes, I do.
It's okay. It's fine. But I always know every time I saw a pink dress in the store, I'd be like, well, I know why that's here. Yes. But that, I mean, I love that. That's one of the things that I love so much about you is you're like, ooh, I just love pink.
Oh gosh, I still do.
Yeah, you know, at least you're consistent with it.
Very consistent. Very consistent.
So when you look for a new line, you're looking for a new line in the store. What are you looking for?
Well, you know, that has changed in the last 7-8 years for me as well. It used to be based solely on the dresses that I was looking at. And now there are other components that are just as important to me, and that is who is running that company. Because human relationships are so very important. And I think that during the COVID shutdown, you know, I found out who treated Mon Amie nicely and who didn't. And so that in looking for a new line, I will have several conversations with whoever is selling me this line before pulling the trigger. I will also check on them with other stores. But I love coming across new lines because there definitely is still a lot of new stuff out there.
Yes.
And I've had really good luck in the European markets.
And I think too, you know, maybe another component of that is Mon Amie being as established as we are.
Thank you for not saying old.
Of course, yes. Of course. Mon Amie being as established as we are, we also have kind of figured out a chemistry within our staff here. So everybody kind of, I mean, we really do work very closely together, and everybody kind of does work as a family. And I think when designers come in and they interact with us, all the designers we carry for the most part, I would say have very good interactions with all of the staff. So it doesn't just come down to like, oh, you know, the owner or the managers are super close with the designers and they're able to, you know, speak to them about this change you may want. It's like, no, let me ask. Right. Because they're here and I know them. Right. And I feel comfortable enough with them to ask them if these things are possible, or ask them to come say hi to you as the bride, which I think is really awesome. And I mean, I don't know personally how it is at a lot of other stores, but I would have to say that's kind of the great thing about the lines that you bring in, the designers that you bring in, and how this works is.
Well, and I think the other important thing to me has been including a bride no matter what her budget. I mean, we're very unique in that because our opening price point is fairly low compared to other stores, and yet we can also accommodate the bride that has a $7,000, $8,000, $10,000, $12,000 budget. But those brides getting married that really only have $1,400, we can find them a dress and they can be a Mon Amie bride.
Definitely, which is so, and that goes back to the inclusive thing you were talking about.
Yeah.
It goes beyond, one category of inclusivity. Like it's everything. We include all body types, which I think is so amazing. And we've worked on that, getting that so that we have options for everybody, and we have options for all price ranges. And it's really just been, it's the evolution of this store just in the time I've been here, So to me, it's so crazy to think that you have seen this store since it was a little baby. So the evolution of that must be super crazy to you too.
It's really exciting.
Yeah. So, what do you want your customers and future brides to feel about this store when they leave? After they've shopped or before they shop?
I want them to when they walk in the doors, they're very excited. And a lot of them, which is an emotion that I have come to learn about, is that they're nervous. They're really nervous. Because most stores, you don't get the help that we give when you go into a ready-to-wear store. It's a completely different experience. So when a bride walks out of the doors, whether she's purchased or not, I want her to not feel pressured, and I want her to be happy and joyful. I want her to have had that experience of looking in the mirror and loving what she sees. That can be tough sometimes to get to that point. But I think the one thing that I am adamant about with everybody, and you've experienced that, is I don't want to pressure these ladies. They've got too much pressure. So I want them to walk out breathing a sigh of relief.
Yeah. And that's a really big thing. And I'm glad you said that, about the pressure is, I think a lot of people confuse dress buying with like car buying. Like they think it's like, not confuse the two is in the same thing, but they think about the same kind of feeling.
Right.
Like when you walk in and you get the pushy salespeople, and it's kind of just like a decision. It's not like
yes. And I think the problem, if I see any problem with the current consumer brides, is that they really torture themselves. And then it's no longer joyful. They've been to 7 stores. They have 7 favorites. They're going to wear one wedding gown. And they need to learn, which is probably not in their makeup at this particular point in history, but they need to learn to trust themselves at what they see in the mirror.
100%.
It's okay to find a dress on your first time out. Don't assume it can't happen. It can happen. And it's magical when you finally do. And if you don't grab that moment, you will always go chasing to find it, and it's not going to happen. And so I think to just put your shoulders down if you love this dress and you love the way you look in it, and you're going to stand up in front of your family and friends and marry the man that you love or the woman that you love in this dress, do it. Go for it.
Of course.
Don't go to 6 other appointments and try and chase that feeling.